So we begin our second full day of this New Year's retreat, and just yeah, I think it's an opportunity to delight in beginning the new year with something really wholesome. The in that there was a say the reflection that I gave in the last talk about the purifying the kind of the basis or the foundations of the wholesome, and with virtue, with right view, and then the four foundations of mindfulness. There's a different discourse where the Buddha is talking about the four foundations of mindfulness and saying that is like a heap of the wholesome, this is a lot. This is a lot of wholesomeness. This is a lot of goodness. And I thought it was just kind of quite beautiful, really, of the, because sometimes the Buddha, of course, is incredibly articulate, and things are defined pretty specifically, but then to just sort of say, oh, this is a big heap of the wholesome. This is great. So it's something to delight in. One of the themes that stuck in my mind or popped up in my mind from one of the questions of concerning anxiety, and just thinking about that and reflecting on the 2020. I mean, if you got through 2020 with no anxiety, then I don't know, that's something amazing. And it's there was, I mean, the human condition is already worthy of some anxiety and concern. This is not a secure, safe refuge. And but yeah, with this pandemic and in general, political, social, environmental unravelings that happen. Yeah, there's definitely reason to be experiencing some anxiety or some worry, something. But then, as a practitioner, how do we hold that? I mean, that's a really important. It's like the impulse of the mind, the habit of the mind would be to go to anxiety. But they say as practitioners, and this is where that that mention of right view of that we're the owners of our karma, heirs to our karma, that we inherit the fruits, the results of our karma, then and our karma being say our moods, our thoughts, our what we tend to pay attention to or get obsessed with and get caught up in. Those are that is come as well. So if the mind keeps going back to all the various disaster scenarios that are possible, then yeah, it's going to it's going to upset the mind. So learning how to direct attention skillfully to things that are really, they're really wholesome, really skillful, because this is the human realm, and within that realm there are everything is happening, all sorts of good things, all sorts of bad things, and we can get caught up in the things that are disturbing. But I think it's helpful to pay attention to some of the things that are actually really quite meaningful or successful or delightful to the mind, and express the kind of the fundamental goodness or inherent goodness that we have as human beings. We all wish to experience happiness and well-being. We all wish to not experience suffering. We all wish to do something that's meaningful, and people do that, and they overcome obstacles to do that. I recently came across just an article that was is in the news, and it was about a young student who he was doing quite well at school. It was a Catholic. It's here in California, Catholic school, private school, and he's doing very well. His parents were not all that well off, but he was doing quite well. He had some kind of other scholarship, but then his father got sicker and sicker with heart disease, and was waiting for a heart transplant. I mean, it was that serious. His mother was I mean, just some freak accident of playing softball, playing like baseball, and got hit with the ball, and her vision was damaged. Then both of the parents lost their jobs, and this student was going to have to drop out of school, or to leave the school, and that he was going to, which he was doing quite well at. And the school has a program where they're trying to instill service in the students, and they go to a prison, and it's one of the more say larger prisons in California, and also one of the more well-known ones as a maximum security, and maximum and medium, I think. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. But anyway, it's a big prison, and people are in there for lots of unskillful things. But the students go in, and they help the prisoners with reading programs, like reading to them, and then sharing, they like going through like a reading program, and then going through books where they're kind of learning about a particular book, and they're sharing their ideas, and and both the students and the prisoners actually learn a lot. And but anyway, so then the prisoners heard about this, or they wanted to do something, and they asked the uh, um, the head teacher if they'd like to do something to help a student, and that particular student was put forward as a worthy recipient of help. And then the prisoners all got together and they donated some from their own money, and the money that they make in prison, which if they, I mean, it's if you're in prison and you're getting paid at a job, you are getting peanuts, almost nothing. And but they were taking some of their own money, and they spread the word around the prison, and people helped out, and they managed to raise, I think, altogether like $30,000, which covered tuition for 3 years. So he was able to finish high school. And, it's just that kind of generosity, sacrifice. It's just, to me, that's really inspiring. And good things are still happening in the world, and one has to direct attention in ways that do uplift the mind, because if the mind gravitates toward, and that's certainly what the news media is designed to do, is to go to disaster scenarios, like the old adage, for newspapers, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean, it's you get as much shock value as possible, and that's what gets in the headlines. But that doesn't uplift the mind. It's not really useful for us as human beings. So that directing a conscious attention to things that are useful, that are beneficial, that uplift the mind, and so and that is a great counterpoint to, say, anxiety. That recognition of the fundamental goodness of or the possibility of that goodness within the human condition, and the fact that people are even overcoming obstacles in order to bring that forward. I mean, it's quite and so that we all can be doing that, and it's helpful for us. So that as we begin the new year, and sort of recognizing what we what we want to focus on, what we want to, because what we do give attention to becomes the habit of the mind, or the train of thought in the mind. So just learning how to direct attention in skillful ways. And also recognizing that there are all sorts of skillful ways that we can be doing it. Sometimes we think like this is sort of billed as a say beginning of the year meditation retreat, but meditation is not just sitting, or meditation in terms of, from the Buddhist perspective, the word that's most frequently used is bhavana. So it means like bhavana is sort of like to bring into being. So bringing into being that which is skillful, that which is wholesome, that which is peaceful, that which is wise, that which is discerning, bringing into being that which is beneficial. So that, and that's where, there's many avenues to understanding the Dhamma, um, uh, realizing the Dhamma. The like the most frequent example, or the most frequent depiction of in the discourses of when somebody, say, has a realization of Dhamma, enters the stream of Dhamma, is listening to the Dhamma, and that is that's the most frequent. So listening to Dhamma, listening to Dhamma teachings, listening to, and so having made the effort to, say, plugging into a retreat like this, taking the opportunity to listen to Dhamma, and outside of those times, these days there's just so much available, and it's possible to be listening to Dhamma pretty frequently. You won't have to repeat very much. There's just a lot. So that listening, but then also it isn't just hearing it. One has to listen. One has to give ear. One has to open. One opens one's ears. One opens one's heart as well. So that's a part of practice. How do I listen to Dhamma so that it actually comes into the heart, penetrates the heart? Another way is teaching the Dhamma, so that as similarly in the suttas, there's several places where there are people a realization, so that one doesn't have to set oneself up on a high seat somewhere to teach the Dhamma. It's sort of, we all have friends and Dhamma friends. We have people around us. So we might belong to a group, a meditation group or a Buddhist group, and sharing the Dhamma in skillful ways. That's a means for helping to clarify. Or there's that Dhamma discussion where one is sharing and having to clarify, because sometimes or somebody asks you a question, and then to try to articulate it, because sometimes in our own mind I like, oh, this is really clear, I really understand this aspect of Dhamma, and then somebody asks you, and then you start to explain, and then you find yourself tripping all over yourself, and you say, "Oh, I guess I didn't understand that so well after all." So that in itself is helpful. It's just, oh, okay, something that seemed really clear when I don't have to articulate it. I need a bit more clarity there, and so that is we're clarifying Dhamma for ourselves in that way. Reciting the Dhamma, what made me think of this was sitting and listening to the chanting before the meditation. It's just sort of, it's something that is really ordinary for in Buddhist culture and Buddhist monasteries and Buddhist families, I mean, there's chanting is happening all the time, but it's the reciting of it can be a great way of reminding ourselves of the Dhamma, because it's one is when we're chanting it, of course we're hearing it, but then also if for the chanting we need to commit it to memory. I mean, you can be reading the book and then it, as it appears on the page, it can sort of strike one as well. But then also we can, if one's committing it to memory, because that's the in the Buddha's time, that was how the teachings were passed on. They were committed to memory. They were chanted together. And so then when they're being chanted together, then it could be recognized, okay, is there some discrepancy there? So that was passed on through that recitation. So that with that recitation, it reminds oneself, and then just as one becomes more and more familiar and it's sort of embedded in one's memory, oftentimes it's interesting that sometimes just it pops up in a certain lines or certain themes of the that from the chanting, from the and the chanting is, I mean, some of it is devotional, some of it is just straight out of the discourses, out of the teachings, and they are so some of those themes will pop up in the mind, and some it's really useful. It reminds one of Dhamma in different ways, so that or it sheds light on a particular theme of Dhamma in a new way that one hadn't thought. Recitation has an impact on the mind, helping one to realize Dhamma. And then another way is contemplating the Dhamma, like actually thinking about it. I mean, this is sometimes in meditation circles, many people, you want to meditate, but don't want to think or start conceiving of thought as something that is an enemy to meditation, an enemy to the peaceful mind, and that's not really the case. I mean, of course, it can be if it's out of control, but actually contemplating the Dhamma is a part of practice, reflection, investigation. It's like in the seven factors of awakening, the bojjhangas, these seven factors of enlightenment that the Buddha laid down, basic tools of realization. The first one is mindfulness. The second one is Dhamma Vichaya, the investigation of Dhamma. It's one investigates, one contemplates, one lifts up the thought processes so that one can clarify the areas of Dhamma, so one understands more deeply. So that contemplation of Dhamma is an important use of the thought processes. I mean, there's a kind of corollary that we easily come up with in our mind of, you know, I think, therefore I suffer. So if I didn't think, then I wouldn't suffer, which is actually not true at all. But it's a logical equation, but it doesn't actually work that way. If we're still functioning out of greed, hatred, and delusion, whether you think or not, you're still going to suffer. So it's learning how to think with wisdom, with skillful, to contemplate the Dhamma, using the Dhamma as a basis for one's thought processes. So it's investigation. And then the last approach that is talked about as a basis for realization of Dhamma is realization of truth, is meditation. So that stilling of the mind, settling of the mind, and the mind can open. But it does need to be prepared. It isn't, and it's not. And I think it's helpful to see it. It's not an either or of any of these, but it's all of the above. Learning how to listen, learning how to articulate, learning how to recite or to commit things to memory so that they're there. It's learning how to have a devotional practice to a certain degree, and it's learning how to contemplate, learning how to meditate in terms of settling, composing, stilling the mind, and all of those are helpful in all the different all the different ways. So that just gaining that skill and how we approach the Dhamma. So as we say settle into this retreat, just using these tools, and also we have the time to settle the mind with our meditation object, whether we're doing walking meditation or sitting meditation. It's the lifting up the mind towards the meditation object, and paying attention to how to not invest in that agitated mind. Just sort of, one has to be aware and attentive. Okay, the mind is gravitating to some kind of fantasy, some kind of irritation, some kind of dullness sort of coming in, or some restlessness, or some kind of clouded, just not knowing, not clear at all. But recognize behind that there's also this quality of knowing. It's there, and how returning to the knowing, being that one who knows, and lifting it up, making much of it, giving it some space to kind of grow, or giving it space to grow. If it's one is and it's just picking up those themes of the mind that are, let's say, part and parcel of the say 4 foundations of mindfulness. I mean, it's a good structure. It's a classical structure for how to direct attention as we're cultivating knowledge and understanding and peace and clarity, and that course, there are the 4 foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana. Ajahn Jeff does, I think, a very good translation in terms of the frames of reference, because it's what we pay attention to does frame what we do experience. I mean, it's the nature of how the mind works. So that, yeah, I started talking. We frame things in the disaster scenarios of the news, and that has a certain result. If we frame it from the perspective of, and this is where, say the perspective of the body, feeling, mind objects, those are, say, fundamental to the human experience. And we can start to recognize the ways in which the mind gravitates to either, liking or disliking, wanting, not wanting, approving, disapproving, and then we've got a handle on it. We can also start to recognize that whatever we experience in this field of the experience of the body, of feeling, of mind objects, whatever we're experiencing, it keeps appearing over and over again. Everything is impermanent, it's unsatisfactory, it is not self. This anicca, dukkha, anatta, these are what are called the universal characteristics. And that's not a dismissal, it's not a put down, it's just, this is the way things are. This is their nature. And they are, and this is, the Buddha is quite explicit, and this is whether, say, a Buddha is born in the world or whether a Buddha is not born in the world, all compounded things, all conditioned things are impermanent. Whether a Buddha is born in the world, whether a Buddha is not born in the world, all conditioned things are unsatisfactory. They're dukkha. Whether a Buddha is born in the world, whether a Buddha is not born in the world, all phenomena are not self. And the duty of a Buddha is to realize that, to point it out, to clarify it, to elucidate it, to make it clear. This is the way things truly are. And so that in seeing this are, because the frame of reference of our experience is this body, this mind, and to go out and try to figure it all out is a I mean, it's kind of endless. It's like Ajahn Chah sort of saying that you don't need to go and go through the forest and look at every single tree in the forest or in the province or in the country or in the world to know the nature of trees. The nature of trees is that they've got, whether they've got, all you need is one tree, and you've got roots, they've got a trunk, they've got branches, they've got leaves. They might have fruit or not, but they're all like that. You don't You don't have to go around. You just take one and look at it really clearly. So in the same way, this human condition, this world that we live in, is seen through this frame of reference of us, this body, this mind, this experience here. And so we bring mindfulness to bear on that, and to reflect, to recollect, to investigate, to settle the mind, um, and then to recognize how's that work? What's happening? Is it making me feel more peaceful, more clear? Is it making me agitated and stirred up? Am I getting confused, or what's happening? And that so one has to pay attention to the say that process, and learn how to engage in that process of a practice, of training, of exploring, of experimenting, and seeing what what works, what doesn't work, what's helpful for clarity and peace and understanding. And the Buddha gives a lovely image of that, and is the example of a cook who say is a royal cook in the palace, and there's and one of them is there's a cook who doesn't really pay attention. He makes his food, and he doesn't really pay attention to what the king actually likes and what he dislikes. Doesn't pay attention to the response. He makes food that is either spicy or not spicy, salty or not spicy. It's got it's just different kinds of foods, different dishes, but he just sort of makes it, puts it out, and he doesn't really pay attention. And the Buddha says, well, he'll well, he probably won't last long in the in the palace as a cook, and or if he were working, anywhere really, in any restaurant. If you're not really paying attention to what people actually enjoy eating, or what's actually tasty, and then you're just not going to it's not going to be very successful. So in the same way that there's this intelligent, astute cook who prepares the different dishes, and some of them are like this and some of them are like that, and pays attention to what the response is, what the liking is, and then that he receives it's like a steady work. He gets bonuses. He gets he's well paid for his job. So, but then the Buddha says, similarly, a meditator has to pay attention to the results, and paying attention to the experience and the theme of the mind. How does the mind respond when one, say, turns one's attention to mindfulness of the body, or mindfulness of the body in one way, so mindfulness of breathing, or 32 parts of the body. What happens when we pay attention to feeling, or paying attention to the mind? What happens when we cultivate loving kindness? What happens when there's an investigation going on? So that one has to, when one pays attention and is alert to the changes, the nuances, the responses of the mind, then one experiences happiness and well-being. One is rewarded with, say, well-being in the here and now, and mindfulness and clear comprehension. This clear discernment. These are naturally arise in the mind because one has paid attention to the themes of the mind, paid attention to the, explored that, developed it, and directed attention to the things that support, increased clarity, increased well-being, increased discernment, so that one uses these tools that the Buddha gives us, and we have to develop skill with those tools, developing skill with the directing attention to the, say, like this to say, attention to the body, and the different foundations of mindfulness are body, feeling, mind objects. But so often we don't direct attention to our body, or we it's like, let's see, there's a short story of James Joyce's in the Dubliners, and Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body, and so, most of us are Mr. Duffys, and we're a bit kind of distant, and not really tuned in, not really anchored, not grounded, not embodied, so that just learning the skills of bringing mindfulness and clear comprehension into the body, bringing mindfulness and clear comprehension into the feeling of pleasurable feeling, painful feeling, neutral feeling. It's pretty basic, but we tend to skip over it, and then the mind keeps cranking out responses, reactions that we're not really clear where'd that come from. The moods of the mind are oftentimes we're not really present with it. We tend to go to the concepts and ideals of how things should be. So that sense of that grounding ourselves in awareness, in clear comprehension. This is a training to be done. This is a cultivation, a bhavana, a bringing into being, so that our mind, our meditation is not just trying to shut the mind up and make it behave. It's you have to work with it. You have to become friends with the mind. You have to be willing to collaborate with it and work with it, understand it, give it some space, and so that and I think particularly, say, as we begin this new year, It's always an opportunity for like a reset, beginning anew, beginning fresh. So I'll leave it there for right now and offer that for reflection.
Handamayang Dhamma Kathaya Sadhu Karang Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Okay, so there we'll continue with Q&A session, and we definitely haven't run out of questions. So there's a question here from Malaysia. When we meditate, we observe our breath. What should we do if we reach a state of stillness where no breath can be observed? So that, yeah, I mean, this is definitely an experience that is not uncommon. We're using the breath as a vehicle for our mindfulness, awareness, our focus, and as the attention becomes more steady or comfortable, sometimes the breath itself becomes not so discernible, and not in the sense of, I mean, if your head is on the floor and you're snoring, that's not a state of stillness. That but there is a stillness where the mind wants to go to something more refined, and it is happy within awareness itself, happy within the knowing itself, and so that the experience of the breath can fall away, but the quality of knowing, or the attention of the knowing, can be the object itself. The awareness can be the experience itself that one is attentive to, and even when the breath falls away, one of in meditation, one of the qualities that the forest monks talk about, forest masters talk about, Ajahn Chah, certainly in particular, a factor of all one's meditation, or appropriate meditation, correct meditation, mindfulness is a crucial factor. There's mindfulness within so that even if there is not the experience of the sensation of the breath coming in, going out, the mindfulness of the, say, state of mind, the mindfulness of the awareness itself, mindfulness, or it could focus on something else. It could turn to a sensation of just a pleasant sensation, which doesn't have to be that defined. So but the mindfulness is still there. So when it's always, uh, say, attentive or alert to that quality of knowing, and that's that sense of, as I mentioned in the very first thought, of that, yeah, being the knowing. And similarly with Buddho, I mean, as the, Buddho, I mean, it means the one who knows. So that sometimes when the mind becomes still, then say the Buddho, the recitation will fall away, but the knowing is still there. You don't have to say Buddho, I mean, in terms of the one who knows, the quality is there. The capacity of the mind to be aware, to be alert. So that's what one is present with, allowing that knowing to stand up, to be clear. During my sitting this morning, the thoughts keep arising one after another. It seems endlessly. I would seek Luang Por's advice on how to notice, learn, and recognize thoughts as function of the mind and not to be affected by them. Also, how can one make use of skillful thoughts in meditation? Thank you. And I've mentioned this. I think it's worth articulating that question, because it is something that people tend to struggle with. It's like we 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 don't want thoughts to intrude on our peaceful mind, and it's sort of, I mean, it's kind of like, my mind is so precious that I can't have a thought. I mean, well, you put it in that way, and it's just kind of pathetic. But that sense of oh, a thought, it's just a thought, and why do I get so identified and caught up and uptight about it? So it's just this recognizing thought is thought, and thought has results, but it's sort of recognizing, okay, that's that's a thought. It's what thoughts do. So that being able to see that, oh, this is the nature, and sort of think, well, if one takes it back and puts, oh, there's a thought that is, oh, that is impermanent, that is unsatisfactory, that is not self. That's actually taking it into a realm of uh, um, it's taking it into a realm of insight and letting go. So that letting go, relinquishing, releasing, in the sense of relinquishing with kindness, relinquishing with patience. That's because sometimes we're impatient to get rid of, and that sets up a dynamic of tension in the mind. So contemplating in terms of their yeah, inconstant, unsure, uncertain nature, unsatisfactory nature, those are all helpful for relinquishment. In terms of using thought to, like, thoughts of loving kindness are really, they can be really crucial for settling the mind and turning the mind to peacefulness, to collecting in stability. Like loving kindness is really helpful tool for directing the mind to, as one's using thought and using these thoughts of directing attention to loving kindness, feeling the quality of, but it's a really skillful bridge to peacefulness, to composure, to settling, to stabilizing the mind in meditative stillness. So it's a learning how to use thought and not say not fighting with it, not struggling with it, not being conjuring it up as an enemy. It's just a thought. Is just a thought, and it's that Ajahn Chah used to have a term that he would use in the Thai language, and it's just and it's like canon. It's like, oh, it's just that much. It's only that much. It's just a thought. It's just a feeling. It's just a mood. It's only that much. And so when we see it as, oh, it's only that much. Oh, I can let that go, rather than, oh, I've got to come up with a whole sort of story and scenario of me having to deal with my mind. It's a whole different realm. So canon, it's only that much. I don't have to hang on to it. I don't have to believe it. I don't have to make a story out of it. It's just that much. So that's a nice way of working with the mind. But again, it's also how it's held, in the sense of it's only that much. It's not nothing to be bothered about. Just the kindest thing is to let it go. So then that's really skillful. Let's see where. There's a. There's a question about what say what method, what technique is there that in order to help to see the kind of arising and ceasing really clearly. And there's not, there's no method. You just have to do it. Just pay attention. It's arising and ceasing all the time anyway. And I need a method to be able to see it. If I only had the right method, then I'd see it. It's sort of like we're already setting oneself up in terms of undermining oneself or excusing oneself. So, but that's the nature of all things. They're arising. It's arising and ceasing all the time. We just pay attention, be there. It's like, just do it for one. So it's it's possible. It's not beyond the means of, like the Buddha said, if you couldn't do this, I wouldn't teach it. But because you can do this, I teach it. And you can realize Dhamma. You can see the Dhamma. You can be the Dhamma. And so that's why I teach it. And so that gaining that kind of recollection, remembrance, and confidence. Another aspect is so that sense of seeing the a question that is what kind of method or what kind of technique, because to realize the fruits of the practice, the same magapala, the makporn, the fruits and the path of this practice. We'd like to see it in this life. But it's say what method, what technique is the easiest or most effective. But I can guarantee that looking for the easiest way is the least effective way. So it's you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to put in some effort. You have to be willing to experiment, willing to try things out. You have to be willing to fail. It's like I think it was Zen Master Dogen, sort of one of the founder of Soto Zen in Japan, said, like practice is one mistake after another, and you think, well, that's pretty dismal, but that we don't learn just because we think we've got a good idea and it would do it. I mean, we learn. That's how we learn. Is okay, that didn't work, that worked, and so we have to be willing to experiment a bit, rather than say looking for the easiest, most effective way. I remember one time, as I just recently arrived in America. This is over 20 years ago, and went down to Los Angeles to attend lectures by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They were being held at UCLA in a small auditorium. It was probably, a small auditorium with for the Dalai Lama was maybe a couple thousand people. So listening to teachings and the teachings were on emptiness, and I think it was a text of Nagarjuna's on emptiness, and he was giving teachings, and it was very good, wonderful, and then after, and it was I think it was almost a week-long teachings, so extensive teachings, and then after a few days, there was the opportunity for questions, and so then His Holiness was answering various questions, and then the translator read the question. What is the easiest and quickest way to realize emptiness? And His Holiness listened to the question, and he went really silent. He went really silent, really still. And then he had he was sitting at a seat, and then he had a little podium with his text there, and then he ended up putting his head down on this text and just sitting there for a minute. And the hall, I mean, it's 2,000 people. Just, you could hear a pin drop. Absolutely still, because what's going on? And then after a while, His Holiness got up, reached for a tissue, wiped his eyes. He'd been crying, and he blew his nose, and then he just really fierce. There's no easy, quick way. You have to be willing to practice. You have to be willing to give yourself to this practice. You think, I mean, here's somebody who's the reincarnation of the Bodhisattva of compassion, and okay, he was sort of moved to tears by so no, you have to give yourself to this practice. You have to be willing to do it, and it was a really beautiful teaching, very moving. So you pay attention to that mind, that because we're always negotiating. How can we get out of this? Is really tough, how can we so that just being willing to give oneself to it. It doesn't mean you have to do anything stupid and absolutely, the Buddha says that one of the things that is definitely not the way out of suffering is that attakila matano yoko, that commitment to self-abnegation, self-torture. That is an extreme to be avoided. But it's something to be it does entail some. There's another place where the Buddha says this is a Viryavada. He describing his teaching. Viryavada says this is a teaching relying on effort. It takes some effort. And that sense of waiting for it's like the Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot. I mean, it's that you're waiting for the Buddha. It's not. It isn't how it works. It requires some effort. But of course it's right effort. It's balanced effort. Okay, another. Question from Singapore. How can I assist a person who is obviously suffering because of a lack of quote unquote right understanding about issues happening, but doesn't accept a religious-like communication? I'm doing a role of counselor while I'm working. I'd like to seek how to approach the way whereby even non-religious persons also can accept to help him or herself. So I think again, one is approaching the human condition, and the Buddha didn't see. It's important to recollect or remember that the Buddha didn't teach Buddhism. The Buddha taught Dhamma, and so that it's just, this is the way things are. This is the way human beings suffer. This is the way human beings create happiness. These are the conditions that lead to well-being. These are the conditions that lead to conflict. So it's non-religious in that sense, and it's about the human condition, and the Buddha was brilliant at understanding the human condition and giving us the tools to free the heart. So that just, it's recognizing that okay, the tools and it's universal. maybe there's nuances and whatnot, but yeah, there's a universal tendencies that are really common. And so it's yeah, and it's helpful in talking with other people that you know, one does try to sort of incorporate or speak from a place of the human condition rather than from a doctrinal position, um, um, and whether it's within, say, friends or relatives, or within, say, a work situation. Yeah, those communication is much more effective um, when you're actually human to human, as opposed to, yeah, some religious viewpoint or some doctrinal perspective, and then trying to apply it to them. One can reference some of the teachings, but it's more as a these are tools to try out. These are things that might be a helpful perspective, but it's helpful to yeah, it's that human communication, human connection that's important. There's a question is in regards to compassion and practice. I feel as I have refined the awareness of myself and how my actions impact others, also my sensitivity has increased. If I feel that I've said or done something that caused someone hurt, I immediately attempt to clean it up. At the same time, I feel great pain for having been unskillful. It's not regret, but rather remorse and sorrow. Please advise on how to refine my understanding so that I suffer less for this. It's not a frequent occurrence, but I notice that I suffer immensely when I am unskillful. Well, I think one of the things is, I mean, that's preferable to to being completely unaware. But I mean, I appreciate that sense of because I think in the talk, my previous talk, I was talking about hiri and otapa, and these are, say, that quality of yeah, certain shrinking back or embarrassment. Shame is a bit strong in the English language, and of one's own actions, and then the kind of a certain trepidation that one feels of unskillfulness. But it's really important to recognize that those are those are really wholesome qualities. When we in the English language, when we conceive of a sense of shame or embarrassment or shrinking back from our unskillfulness, yeah, then it's invariably, there's usually so much self involved that we feel, yeah, it's a pain. And similarly in terms of relationship to other people. But then, as I mentioned this morning, that sense of respect is respect for oneself, respect for others is your predominant motivating factor. So when with that respect, that quality of recognition is very wholesome and bright. So there might be a movement of discomfort, but it is very, wholesome, very bright, and the mind is uplifted because of that quality of respect that one's holding for oneself, and the respect and appreciation for others and our connection with others. So these are bright qualities, and they, yeah, and they're, I think it's just find that response and stepping back from the sense of, say, self-investment, and then tuning into the kind of respect and appreciation that one has for oneself and one's human connection with others. So that's a way of holding it. Another question is from Malaysia. When we accidentally break the 8 precepts, once we realize it, then what is the proper response in the mind? I observe my thoughts upon realizing, accepting, and acknowledge my pain, then move on, continue to observe 8 precepts. Is this a proper way? I think one of the things is again, recognize, okay, just how it's written, accidentally. I mean, there needs to be, those precepts are all, those are training rules that one is taking on, so that if there's a, if there's not a clear intention, then one acknowledges or recognizes it and just starts again. But also sort of recognizing that you would say with 8 precepts, and I would expect for anybody who signed up for, say, a retreat, that the say, like say there's, with 8 precepts, and there are aspects of the 8 precepts that are moral precepts. So not killing, not stealing, not lying. So those are, say, those are, those have a moral consequence to it. They have an immediate result, and are, they're painful. The others, say, like not eating afternoon, entertainment, beautification, dormant, sleeping on, those are, some of them are training precepts. So they are renunciant precepts. One is, it's not a, it's not a moral failure or a say there's a moral stain on somebody who eats something in the afternoon. I mean, it's not the way it works. But it is something we are committing to, a simplicity, and we're wanting to create a certain discipline in our life that we appreciate and want to cultivate. So it's recognizing the difference between the two, and we respond to them a little bit differently. I mean, one is just, okay, with something like things that are very quite unskillful, then it's something that one needs to be very careful with. Something that's just is a renunciant precept, is just, okay, start again. I mean, all of them really, you start again, but there's probably a bit more conscious attention given to things that are that have a, say, have a moral implication, or have a that sense of where one has been, because they're harming others in ways that are painful, and we reap that pain ourselves as well. let's see, we'll go to back and forth here a bit. Let's see. There looks like there's a question around mindfulness of breathing, and say anapanasati, and it's a little bit unclear what the question is, but I think in the sense of it's anapanasati fulfills both the aspects of calming, of samatha meditation, and vipassana meditation, insight, and so that's a it's a an aspect of the cultivation of mindfulness of breathing, that it does have it has a dual purpose, and in reality, most meditations do. I think there's a kind of, I think, contrived division between, oh, that's samatha and that's vipassana. That in the suttas, that's really, the Buddha doesn't really talk about it, because it's just this one mind, and it does need to be peaceful, and it does need to see things clearly, and that's all that samatha is, just a peacefulness, tranquility, settling of the mind. The vipassana is seeing clearly, penetrating with understanding, so that and in the end, techniques are, they're helpful tools, they're supports, but it's how we apply the mind, so that when we apply the mind to settling, because we can, we could take what would be a classically considered, so like the kind of the epitome of insight, is insight into anicca, dukkha, anatta, into impermanence, unsatisfactory, non-self. You can still use that as a theme to settle and bring the mind to a place of tranquility and peacefulness. I mean, that's incredibly useful. So it's maybe not trying not to get caught into creating false dichotomies in the mind, splitting the mind into these terms that are sort of counterproductive. And so there's another question concerning metta and loving kindness, where sometimes there's, say, loving kindness, metta there, and I can feel it, and it helps to handle challenging situations. But then, there's sometimes restlessness and hostility, and get reactive. How to work with this so that the mind can be tamed. But I think, again, it's this sense of recognizing that there's a really big difference between how we feel and how we respond to the world when, say, loving kindness is predominant, when loving kindness is a an actual object of attention, and one has been able to develop a continuity, and also recognizing that, say, I mean, the metta or loving kindness, loving friendliness is another translation, um, is I mean, there's all sorts of methods of cultivating and phrases to use, but the important aspect is the quality within the heart, being able to internalize that. And the various phrases that we use, and there's many different kind of phrases, and different teachers teach it in different ways, and so that there's many approaches, but what's important is like that essence of of loving kindness. Or metta is a say, like in the Sanskrit it's mitra, and mitra is friend, and metta is similar, is that friend, uh, and so like the kalyanamitta, like a good friend, a kind friend, a loving friend. So that sense of really drawing that kindness into the heart. So it's a heart feeling. It's how the emotional base responds to ourselves and the world around us. So that there's a sense of well-wishing, sense of kindness, a not having to contract in fear or aversion. So then it's one's opening that possibility to the mind to be experiencing that sense of well-being, and that's it's something that we can be consciously cultivating. It's something that we can be directing attention to, and it's also something that gains traction as we do it, because it feels good, it feels comfortable, it's soothing to the mind, it's uplifting to the mind. The heart really feels at ease and comfortable. So it's something to, and I mentioned it under, I don't know, one other question, but it's a really good bridge for settling the mind, for say for the mind to absorb into its object of meditation. When you're relating to your object of meditation through kindness and friendliness, that meditation settles much more uh, reliably, or more readily. So it's a really useful tool for everything. So those are questions. I don't think I got through absolutely every one of them, but I think we made a pretty good dent. So we'll leave it there for this, and then we'll.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.